Welcome back to the American Valor podcast. Today we are speaking with Lindsay Berra. Lindsay is the granddaughter of Lorenzo Pedro, Lawrence Peter Yogi Berra, the inaugural recipient of the Hall of Fame Bob Feller Act of Valor Award in 2013. Lindsay, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks so much for having me, Enrique. About me, as you mentioned, I'm Yogi's granddaughter, first and foremost. Carmen's granddaughter too. Um, I'm a board member at my grandfather's museum. I have been for many years, because keeping his legacy alive is tremendously important to me. I'm a sports writer. I was at ESPN Magazine for 13 years, MLB.com and MLB Network for 6 years. I've been uh, freelance for a while, but my main gig at the moment for the last 4 years has been working with Tom House, the pitching coach's pitching mechanics app called Mustard, which is about to be moving into golf. So you guys can all check that out in the app store soon. Mustard for pitching and mustard for your golf swing. We all know we need a little bit more mustard, so you know. But yeah, that's me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yes, as a golfer, I am going to enjoy that. Matter of fact, going to be golfing for my birthday here soon. But, folks, at the Bob Feller Act of Valor Foundation, we strive to educate, support, and recognize by instilling the timeless values of service, sacrifice, legacy, and citizenship. And today we'll be speaking about, in my opinion, the greatest catcher and champion in baseball, Yogi Berra. Yogi was raised at the Hill, St. Louis, Missouri. He left his baseball career to the side to serve in the Navy in World War II. I'm also a Navy sailor. And after his service time, he returned to baseball to dominate. Now I'm talking about dominate. 18 seasons with 10 World Series championships and three additional as a coach and manager. Now, Lindsay, the documentary you produced, it ain't over. And folks, if you have not seen this, you are missing something. But if you're from the Bronx and you have not seen this, shame on you. It was absolutely amazing. And it took me through a roller coaster of emotions because I grew up right across the street from Yankee Stadium. And we want to focus today or the discussion around the four pillars of Bob Feller Act of Valor Foundation and how Yogi exemplified these. So let's start with service. How did your grandfather's decision to serve in the military reflect on his sense of duty and citizenship?
So my grandfather was a first generation Italian immigrant. His parents k- he had older brothers were born in Italy. The parents came here. He was born here. But he was, proud to be Italian, but also very proud to be American, and just felt it was his duty to serve his country. So he already had signed with the Yankees, and he was playing in Norfolk, Virginia for the Norfolk Tars in the Piedmont League. And he turned 18 on May 12th, 1943. And he had actually signed a contract with the Norfolk Tars for $90 a month, and he would have gotten a $500 bonus had he stayed and finished the whole season. But on May 12th, when he turned 18, he walked his butt over to the naval base and enlisted in the Navy. So he didn't get his bonus for playing with the Tars. Um, but I think he just thought it was the right thing to do. The country needed him, and he was gonna step up. So he actually volunteered before he even had a chance to be drafted. Um, and I don't think that he like looked at it in that like existential way where he was doing this great thing. He just knew that it was the right thing to do, and this was the time that we were in the world, and this is what needed to be done, and he was going to be there to do it.
And I tell you, for citizenship, that is about the most exemplary example of what a citizen is. The draft was in full effect.
Hmm.
He volunteered, right? So in a sense, as I grew up in the volunteer service era, in a sense, he started the volunteer service era by doing so. And so many other players did the same. They put aside their careers to go ahead and serve. And what a legacy, and we'll be talking about legacy later on, but what a legacy to leave to your family as a service member and to all of those that have served to go ahead and volunteer for something that was a high task. Now, we'll talk about high task. We'll bring up sacrifice. How did Yogi's actions on D Day exemplify the concept of sacrifice? And I know that you guys have a good amount of information now from his time in service.
Yeah, so again, I don't think he thought of this as it was happening to him, right? So he was a machine gunner's assistant on the an LCSS landing craft support small, which came off of the bigger boat, the USS Bayfield. So he was off of Omaha Beach during the D-Day invasion, providing cover fire for our troops going ashore. And he was also part of the invasion of southern France. A few weeks later, he took a bullet or a piece of shrapnel in the hand. We don't know which one it was. And he was nominated for a Purple Heart because he had been wounded in battle. And he declined to fill out the paperwork because he didn't want my great grandmother to get a telegram and worry that he had been hurt. Um, so he was never like looking for recognition for any of these things that he did. But he was in the thick of it on D-Day. When you see the videos of the bombs and the bullets and those big German 88 guns, he was like 100 yards off the beach providing the cover fire. He was on the water for 10 days. And when you think about sacrifice, like I don't know that he thought about it in terms of himself, but the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that was made by so many men who were killed on that day, I think that was with him like his entire life. When he came back to the United States and was able to go on with his baseball career and make the big leagues and win the World Series, he develops this reputation for being one of the greatest clutch hitters in the history of baseball. And I think when you've been through a real life or death situation, um, when you come up to bat in the bottom of the ninth with two runners on and you're down by a run, that wasn't pressure to him because he'd been through this incredible pressure situation and he looked at that situation only as opportunity and a God-given gift that he was put in that situation to make something happen when so many other men didn't get the chance to come home and live their lives. So I think he looked at his life, and again, maybe not like consciously, but I think that the sacrifice of others on that day was so in his mind that it definitely just colored the way he went through the world for the rest of his life, taking advantage of opportunities he was given, enjoying every moment. Nobody who ever saw Grandpa play would argue that he had more fun on the baseball field than anybody, and it was because he knew he was lucky enough to be playing a kid's game for a living, in this second chance at life that he got that so many other men did not.
And I agree. I believe he said, baseball ain't hard, war is,
Car.
right?
Hmm.
War is hard. And, to his credit, and then you talk about the kids game, right? Because I remember the Larson final pitch. He goes and
Yeah.
he gets on Larson, and it definitely showed the kid in playing at the hill, and the baseball.
What's so crazy about that though? Like he jumps on Don Larson, and that's after the first and only perfect game in World Series history. For the folks who don't know, he runs out from behind the plate and leaps on Don Larson. But if you watch the documentary, even in the few clips that we have of him, like catching a third strike, if he caught a third strike, that he would like leap out of the crouch like he was winning the World Series, and it was just a random third strike. He just was like, "Woo, we got it out!" Right? Like he had that much fun in every play, regardless of the weight of the moment. He just loved being out there.
And I think as spectators, that's what we loved about seeing those moments. He was truly playing his heart out,
Yeah.
and we thank him for it, even still today. You mentioned about those clutch hits, right? He is responsible for the first pinch hit home run in World Series. So he did not just do history once; he kept making history in the game. And so, as we talk about legacy, and we mentioned it earlier, what specific actions, because this event that I saw in the documentary, I remember going on, but until I saw it and refreshed to my memory, I said, "Oh my goodness, this did happen." What specific actions led to Yogi being awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom? And I know you fought for that so hard, 11th hour type of an event, right? To the highest civilian award of the United States. How did that come
Yeah.
about?
So I think it is important for folks to realize that the Presidential Medal of Freedom is, as you just said, a civilian honor. It has nothing to do with his military service at all. It's about what you give back to American society. And, the things that we talked about so much were like, he was just such a good human being, right? Like he treated everybody with just the same kind of respect and dignity that he would want to be treated with. It didn't matter if you were the mailman or the president of the United States or his dry cleaner or one of his children's friends. You everybody got the same guy. As famous as he was, there were no like airs about him. um, he only went to school till the 8th grade, and it was something that kind of irked him his whole life. As soon as he had enough money to do it, he established a scholarship fund at Columbia University. This is in the early 50s that was endowed and is still around today because education was so important to him. And when he started the museum, that was like a key piece of it, that it had to be the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center. And we teach lots of character education programs. We teach science and math through baseball. But it really passing grandpa's values on to a new generation of kids. And we serve a lot of kids, many of them underprivileged kids. So that was part of it. I think grandpa became sort of a accidental, and I don't mean accidental like it happened, but I mean like he didn't realize he was doing it. It happened just because he was a good person, like civil rights activist, because he was, he had served with African Americans in World War II, and he met Jackie Robinson in 1946, like before Jackie broke the color barrier. Jackie was playing in Montreal when my grandfather was playing for the Newark Bears. And he was friendly with Jackie and Minnie Minoso and Elston Howard, and made no big deal about going over to say hello to Jackie, or you know helping Elston Howard when the Yankees were in Florida, which was very much segregated in the mid 50s, like very segregated. Ellie wasn't allowed to ride the bus or eat in the restaurants with the Yankees. So grandpa would go to the black restaurants so Ellie wouldn't have to eat by himself. He just did the right thing all the time. And I think that had a ripple effect on the people around him. And all of that was things that we were trying to play up with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I think, after he got done with his playing career, he was in baseball. He retired from playing in 1964, played his last few at bats in early 65 with the Mets, but he was in baseball till the early 90s. He coached for like 30 years, passing on his knowledge of the game to the next generations, and really passing on that love that he had for baseball. Um, and it just was like an incredible life, an incredible run.
Yeah, and as a witness, being a Bronx bomber myself, the impact he had on baseball is one thing. The impact he had on the community was beyond what people can imagine. I was a kid growing in the Bronx. watching the games, hearing actually the games, because you can hear the games from your kitchen
So
window,
cool. So cool.
right? I would much rather be at the stadium, but sometimes you just couldn't afford it. But you would hear the games and the cracks and the loud yells and screams, and you just lived that. It was part of you. And what he did for baseball is amazing by itself. But what he did for community was just beyond what he could ever imagine. I don't think that he could ever imagine how much, right?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't thinking of grandeur.
No, and I think back then too, he was an Italian immigrant. There was so much about Grandpa that people could identify with. As we've talked about, he was a veteran, he was an Italian immigrant. He was just this really devoted family man, had this beautiful relationship with my grandmother. So there was just a lot about him that normal folks could relate to. And, we say in the movie, like, he wasn't like the Captain America looking like Mickey Mantle. He was just like a normal dude, right? And I think that was so appealing to people. And he was such a good baseball player. I mean, he still has records today that I think will never be broken. Like when you talk about 148 game errorless streaks and 117 double headers caught. I mean, the errorless streak that has been broken, but the double headers and 75 World Series games. He still has records for World Series hits and appearances and 18 played in 18 All-Star games. That's crazy. Just what he was able to do and stay so normal is really, I think, what so endeared him to people, right? I mean, I hear stories from people all the time who are like, "Oh, I met your grandpa in a parking garage when I was 15. I was walking with my mother and he was so nice and he talked to me for like 5 minutes and I told him I was a shortstop and he gave me some tips." And like everybody has these great stories about these interactions with him. Like there's not a lot of stories about him blowing somebody off. And if he blew you off, it was probably because you asked him for an autograph when he had a mouthful of rigatoni at a restaurant. Like you needed to like relax and let him finish chewing, right? So, um, it's really amazing for me to see how all the love he put into the world is still coming back to him in spades. And I get it all the time in the form of these stories of the I met him once, and people who telling me that like they loved my grandfather and they mean it in the same sense of the word as I mean it when I say I loved my grandfather. Like that's an amazing legacy to leave behind.
Definitely a powerful legacy and one that we all feel. And so thank him eternally for that. Now, as we talk about citizenship, we talk about he was born in the States. So he had this sense of duty to the country. What lessons can we learn from his life about the importance of service and sacrifice for one's country?
I mean, he was really proud of his service in the Navy, and it is a big part of the museum. We have a whole section on his naval service, and it's something that we point to with the kids and tell them the stories about how Grandpa felt it was his duty. But citizenship, like we are all citizens of the world, and my grandpa was like the best kind of citizen. He was someone that you would definitely want on your team. But he just was like so good to people and so not judgmental, and he didn't look at where you came from or what color you were or how tall you were. you know in the baseball sense of it, he cared whether or not you could hit or whether or not you were fast, like Jackie Robinson, he was going to have to worry about you on the base paths all the time, right? He cared about you as a human and what you brought to the table, right? And you know today we talk about the country being so divided. I feel like if more people could just look at people for who they are and not what they think they are, we'd be in a lot better place. And Grandpa just had this innate ability to just not snap to judgments, right? And we all do that. And I don't know how he was able to not do it, but I mean, we tell the kids at the museum, like, if you just think about how Grandpa would have treated people and you just try to do a little better every day, like nobody's going to ever be as innately good as he was, because I really think that he was like, they broke the mold when they made my grandpa Yogi. But if you just try to do a little better, you will be a better citizen, and that's his legacy. His legacy is in that effort.
We really loved his life. We really loved his love for the game, his family. Yeah, you talk about citizenship. His love for family is one of the greatest examples I have seen. And I'm Puerto Rican, right? So,
Yeah.
but coming from this Italian kid that somehow developed this structure, it was just the way a human was supposed to be. And that's inspiring almost every day that I think about it. When I was preparing for this, and I told you, I saw the documentary. I was a mess. I was bawling, but it's funny how what he thought wasn't that important was a great deal for somebody else. And I know that his return to Yankee Stadium was eclipsed by another milestone that you can't even make this up, right? Yogi Berra Day, July 18th, 1999. Now, I was in service already, but remember watching it. But it was special to me because it happened to be my birthday.
Yeah.
And so, uh, not only that, he comes back to the stadium. I'm just so proud, this Bronx kid, to see him come back. And then something that would could not be scripted. You can't make it up. Another perfect game on the day that Yogi and Larson are in the stadium. When I saw all of that happen, I was just a mess because it took me back to that day. And so I just want to take this time to thank you for capturing that. I know that you wanted to honor your grandfather and his legacy, but you brought so much joy. And I don't know if you understand this. You brought so much joy to young men that were growing up watching all this happen, but definitely to me because it was my birthday. So
That's
today's my
amazing.
birthday.
First of all, that is your, and again, happy birthday, because we're doing this on the 25th anniversary of David Cohn's perfect game on July 18th, 1999. It's July 18th, 2024. And it's funny. So Sean Mullen is the director of It Ain't Over, our documentary, which everyone can catch on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, all the places. Um, if you he always says that if this had been like a scripted drama, this movie, and you had scripted that, oh, Yogi Berra goes back to Yankee Stadium for the first time in 14 years after making up with George Steinbrenner, and Don Larson, who threw a perfect game in 1956 to Yogi Berra, throws out the first pitch to Yogi Berra, they hand the ball, they hand the gloves back to David Cohn and Joe Girardi, and a perfect game happens. If you had said that in a movie script and given it to a bunch of producers, they would have been like, this is ridiculous. That would never happen. Write something else, right? But it legit happened. And it was funny, like, you were there, so you knew it. But a lot of Yankee fans, a lot of people that I know who have seen the film, had actually kind of forgotten what went down. And when they watch it unfold in the way, Deshaun just did and our editor Julian Robinson just did a tremendous job putting that together. They're like, wait a minute, oh my God, this totally happened. And that's totally nuts. It's just crazy. But it is also, I told you they broke the mold when they made Grandpa, and wins and success and just sort of weirdly magical things followed him wherever he went. And it just kind of makes sense in Yogi Berra land that that would happen on Yogi Berra Day, because that's just who he was and how he rubbed off on people. And it's kind of wild. And I'm thrilled that it brings back the memories for folks who were there, but I'm even more thrilled that young Yankee fans who don't know anything about it can now watch that and learn about that piece of history with the Yankees, the Larson bit and the David Cohn bit. Because let's be honest, I mean, 25 years ago, there's a lot of 10-year-old Yankee fans who don't know David Cohn threw a perfect game and certainly don't know about Don Larson's perfect game, right? So I'm just really happy that the documentary is out there as like a, you know, little piece of history that people can watch and learn, and it can be an educational tool for Yankee fans for generations to come.
Well, it's definitely a touch point for sure for all those that are looking to connect to history and the present. So thank you once again. Now, folks that are listening, folks that are viewing, want to get some more information about you, the museum, the documentary, where would they go for that?
So the museum website is yogiberramuseum.org. We're on the campus of Montclair State University in Little Falls, New Jersey. And I'd love to always throw this in there. We're open Wednesday through Sunday, noon to 5. But as Grandpa always says, we're open till we close. He was funny. I'm wearing my Yogi shirt, so those who are watching can see the YO 8i here. Comes in a bunch of colors. It's my favorite. Um, but we do lots of educational programs for kids. That's the museum has a lot of cool stuff in it for sure. It has all 27 Yankees World Series rings, Grandpa's MVP plaques. There's gloves and jerseys and all kinds of artifacts. But as I said earlier, the most important part to Grandpa was the educational component. And we do both in person and virtual education programs for kids. We have a program based on the Negro Leagues that teaches the history of racism in the country through the through the history of racism in sports. We have a women in sports capsule that also teaches LGBTQ sports history. We have a STEM program, which is really cool, teaches science and math through baseball, where the kids get to like measure their strides as if they were pitchers and learn how they generate power. There's a spoken word capsule where the kids write their own poems based off the yogiisms. Just all kinds of really cool stuff going on at the museum. So come visit, check it out. If you have a elementary school, middle school, high school kid, and you want to pass on some of the programs to their teachers, we're always happy to do programs, and we do them all over the country because they can be done virtually. And we're attached to the baseball stadium at Montclair State, where now the Montclair State team and the NJIT team, two former D3 national champions, they play. So if you come at the right time of year, you can watch a ball game and also visit the museum. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, folks, we're going to have all of that as part of the show notes and video for you to be able to get a hold of the museum and go visit. I definitely have that on my list, and I'm coming
Have
all
you
the way.
not been? You got to come.
I have to come.
Oh
I
my
will
goodness,
come.
Enrique. Yeah, come visit.
I'll definitely be up there and let you know when I'm in the area. But folks, on behalf of the Bob Feller Active Battle Foundation, I want to thank you for joining us. Lindsay, thank you so much for taking your time to share this episode with me. And we thank you all for being with us.
Of course. Thank you so much.